Thank you for joining my lecture. Today, I talk about Moscow just before the collapse of the Soviet Union. When I first landed in Moscow in 1986, shortly after Gorbachev took over the leadership of the Communist Party. When entering the Soviet Union, a young border guard soldier in charge of customs would ask arriving foreigners in Russian, "Why did you come to Russia?" Since many foreigners did not understand Russian, they just passed by. Since I was studying Russian, I answered, "For sightseeing." Then he brought his face closer to me and said, "Give me a cigarette." When I tried to give him a pack of cigarettes, he told me to give him the full carton, although I never gave it to him. The bribe and the corruption of Soviet society became apparent to me upon entering Russia. In the Soviet era, various social slogans were posted on buildings, replacing the advertisements of capitalist nations. Period to communism, advanced towards communism. Rodzinę Slava, glory to the motherland. Communism победит, communism will win. Slava KPSS, glory to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. KPSS, Коммунистическая партия Советского Союза, is an abbreviation of the Russian acronym for the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Ну и как вам живется при капитализме? So how do we live under capitalism? Under the socialist Soviet era, there was no need to list names of companies and stores like in capitalist nations, so store signs displayed what they were selling: мясо, meat, молоко, milk, vino, wine. Have you noticed that the people stand in line not because the restaurant is popular? In a country where is a functioning market mechanism, when demand is high and supply is low, prices will rise and people will not stand in line. However, in the Soviet Union, which was under the socialist system, prices were set artificially low to save face of socialism. So there were lines everywhere. Standing in line was a symbol of the Soviet era. It stands in front of the Kremlin Palace on Red Square in the center of Moscow. National Department Store GUM, Государственный универсальный магазин, is an abbreviation of the Russian acronym for the National Department Store. Under the socialist system, they wanted to set prices low without considering the balance between supply and demand. So even if a good product came out, it would sell out quickly. In the first place, there was no competition between companies, so they were unable to produce good quality products, and only junk-like products were stocked there. Bada, water. A Soviet-era water vending machine where you put a coin in and water comes out. There was a cup sitting there and people were reusing it. The Krasnoyarsk red arrow ran between Moscow and Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. When I went into the toilet and looked down inside the toilet seat, I saw that there was a railroad track beyond the ford. That was the Soviet railroad at that time. It's a big country, so I guess it doesn't matter. When I visited the Soviet Union for the second time in 1990, Perestroika, economic reform, and Glasnost, information disclosure, initiated by Gorbachev, had permeated Soviet society. During the Soviet era, the Beatles' music was considered harmful to the regime and imports of the records were prohibited. And the Beatles' music was not played on radio or television. As Glasnost progressed, Moscow radio station played the Beatles' Yesterday instrumental, and the dance show played song of Michael Jackson, who Soviet authorities said was a symbol of the corrupt American capitalist culture. South Korea, eager to establish diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union, was actively trying to expand its economy, and many advertisements for South Korean companies were being posted, replacing the former socialist slogans. Tourists from Western advanced nations like the United States and Japan were welcomed. They were provided luxurious buses like Mercedes-Benz. There were many Asian people working in Moscow at the time, but everybody could easily recognize Japanese people. There were people who came to work from the Central Asia region of the Soviet Union, as well as exchange students from North Korea and Mongolia. But it was clear from their clothing, belongings, shiny skin, and nutritional status that they clearly came from rich country. In such a situation, a sophisticated and beautiful young woman was walking ahead of me. I never for a second doubted that she was Japanese. However, I couldn't help but wonder, why was a woman like her in Moscow instead of New York City or Paris? My colleague said, she's not Japanese. Just look at her stockings. When I looked, I noticed she was indeed wearing 6 stockings. I also realized that the bright red enamel second bag was strangely out of place with her otherwise sophisticated outfit. Suddenly, the young woman boarded a dilapidated Bulgarian bus carrying a North Korean delegation. A North Korean diplomat in his 50s was bowing respectfully to the young woman. The young woman was sitting in a seat by the window at the back of the bus, looking up at the sky with a blank expression on her face. Even Moscow seemed freer and more glamorous compared to Pyongyang. I have always wondered who she was. But then the mystery was solved. Ko Yong-fang, a North Korean diplomat who became a French interpreter for President Kim Il-sung, when he defected to South Korea in 1991, testified that around the time North Korea brought to Moscow a group of beautiful young women who served North Korean leaders known as Kim Jong-il's so-called pleasure squad. In 1990, the first McDonald's store, a symbol of capitalism, opened in Moscow. At the time, ordinary Russians waited in line for 2.5 hours because even if they did not have foreign currency, such as dollars, yen, pounds, marks, or francs, they could buy food with Soviet rubles. It was like when Tokyo Disneyland opened. In the past, if someone staged an anti-government demonstration, he would have been taken away by the KGB. But thanks to Gorbachev's Glasnost, people were able to demonstrate freely. At this time, demonstrations against war in Afghanistan were intense. By the way, KGB is simply an abbreviation of the Russian word KGB, Комитет Государственной безопасности, National Security Commission. To the English word KGB has no meaning. As the Communist Party of the Soviet Union lost its unifying power and nationalism surged in Russia, Yeltsin gained popular support. On the other hand, Russian intellectuals were worried about the nation's future, saying that supporting Yeltsin and Gorbachev was a slave mentality, the same as people wanting bread rather than freedom. As Perestroika and Glasnost spread, dissatisfaction with ethnic, religious, political, and economic issues which had been suppressed by socialist ideology began to boil over. In contrast to his predecessors who suppressed democratization through force, Gorbachev sought to maintain a dialogue with people. While his approach might have worked for Western leaders, Gorbachev could not survive in the Russian political climate, which demanded a strong man capable of holding the nation together, even at the cost of human rights. A scene in which Russian President Yeltsin strongly advises Gorbachev, the first and last president of the Soviet Union. People all over the world witnessed the situation being reversed. December 1991, collapse of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel to maintain these education activities. I'm looking forward to seeing you again.